Hi, my name is Daniil Dubov. Let's start with thinking what kind of play the players could be trying to get. In my opinion, Dink would be trying to make it as straightforward as possible, both in the over-the-board play and in the opening preparation. While Jan, I would expect him to be a little bit more smart and a little bit more flexible. The score I don't think matters much, as many of the games were played long time ago. But in my opinion, all the most important games they played recently went in Jan's favor. Jan won a very nice and important game in the first lap of candidates, and yes, he did lose the last one, but he was already in the World Championship match, and this game didn't really matter. And Jan won a very important game in the first round of candidates in Madrid with Black, where again this game mattered a lot, and Jan started with the early lead and managed to finally win the tournament. So yeah, in general the momentum seems to be on Jan's side, and we'll see how Dink will try to solve the Jan problem. Speaking of the openings, let's try to figure out what the openings could be, and let's start with the games where Dink will play white. So first of all, he has been trying a lot of 1e4 recently, which, if you want my guess, I would say was most probably a bluff. I don't see him playing it in the match. First of all, his results were not great in the Tatas, even some rapid events with 1e4. Secondly, Jan Petrov looked very solid all the way, starting from candidates in Yek, and I don't see any reasons for Dink to be optimistic there. So my guess would be that he'll be trying to play something with the bishop on g2, which he normally does when it comes to the most important games, which could be first of all 1c4, and then he could face, in my opinion, two problems. The first one is 1e5 g3 c6, which is exactly the way their game in Madrid went, and Jan went on to win, which could be painful for Dink. Plus, objectively, the line, I guess, is just good for Black. Secondly, after knight f6, it's also a bit of a tricky choice, because knight c3 e5 transposes to the variation of English opening that Dink is trying to avoid, as after knight f3, knight c6, g3, d5, takes, bishop g2, bishop c5. Currently, white seems to be a little bit stuck, so he would normally try early g3, which after knight f6 can run into e6, bishop g2, d5. And this is exactly what we saw in Dink's game against Giri, where he came up with this interesting but yeah, objectively very risky idea. It could be that he will come up with some ideas in this line, castles, b3, but again, Jan played it a lot with both sides. I don't see him being really out-prepared there. So my guess would be 1d4. Knight f6, c4, e6. Now it's basically either the Catalan or something with knight of c3. The Catalan is nice, and yeah, was the one who recommended Magnus to play it against Jan. But nowadays it comes to this main line with castles, d takes c4, queen c2, b5, a4, bishop b7, which remains very solid, and which was Jan's choice for the match against Magnus, and in general it proved to be a very, very solid line. The only real idea we had was this knight e5, which Magnus tried early in the match. Jan was out of the book, and he was much worse after the openings, and he was even better, and the game finished in a draw. But anyway, knight e5 is no surprise anymore. So it's hard to judge, but I would say if Dink has ideas here, the rest is less problematic. What could be the rest? The rest could be, first of all, bishop before check, which I would say is less likely of a choice from Jan, as first of all, this is Dink's favorite line is Black. Secondly, I just don't see a single reason for Jan to do it. If he'll be looking for an alternative, I would say d takes c4, knight f3, c5, castles, knight c6 will be his choice, and he tried it a few times in rapid events and in some, I think, classical games too. But once again, it's very much about the main line with d takes c4 and b5. We'll see what Dink has there. If suddenly 1e4 still happens, then the good news for Dink is that Petrov is a very predictable choice, and I think Jan will stick to Petrov at least in the first game after 1e4. And yeah, as we know, Dink has been trying some Italian recently, 2 bishop c4 could be an option as well. Still, analytically, it has never been really problematic for black, it's more of a way to get a game. We'll see what happens. I would still bet on something with the bishop on g2, and I would say 1c4 followed by g3, or the Catalan are the most likely Dink's possible choices. Now, speaking of the games where Jan plays white, it I think is a little bit more predictable for him. It's quite an easy thing to prepare for Dink as white in terms of, you know, guessing the opening. His openings are always solid, but yeah, he basically never changes them. Yes, we did see some knight-drops, we did see Caro-Kann in the Tata still, but I'm pretty sure 1e4, e5 will be his main weapon. Knight f3, knight c6 is the move he likes. Bishop b5, and now most probably a6. Berlin could also be there, and he used to play it from time to time, but in general a6 has been his main move for many years. Bishop a4, knight f6, castles, bishop e7, both d3, b5, bishop b3, d6, and rook e1, b5, bishop b3, castles, a4, or c3, d5 are the positions that are easy to reach as white. So in general, we could see some really targeted preparation from Jan. If his team has ideas in one of the lines, we'll definitely see them a lot. Jan tried this rook e1 followed by a4 against Magnus many times. Magnus was normally opting for rook b8 or bishop b7, while Dink, I think, will stick to his favorite move b5, b4, which in general leads to a very sharp and playable position, which, you know, nowadays is a little bit of a gift for white already. So I would say, if this option will be given, I would say Jan will probably take it, and they could play this position even more than once. Speaking of Jan's alternatives, I mean, still I think 1e4 will be his main weapon, but speaking of 1d4, it's kind of harder to predict Dink here, to be honest, as long as we are not talking about the Catalan. As in the Catalan, knight f6, c4, e6, let's say knight f3, d5, g3. Dink, for some reason which has always been mysterious to me, Dink really likes this move bishop before check, and I don't know why, but he likes it a lot. I played it many times against him as white. I tried all the moves here, bishop d2, knight d2, even knight c3. But let's say this position after bishop d2, bishop e7 is again very playable, and it's not that dry that the mainline Catalan. So again, if Jan is looking for alternatives, this could be a very reasonable choice. If Dink will indeed stick to the line with bishop before check, this kind of gives white many options of at least getting the game. We are not talking advantage. Nowadays everything is a draw, but at least white manages to get the game going and keep some pieces on the board. The problem could be that once again the mainline Catalan is still there with b5 and bishop b7, but somehow if I were Jan, I would think it's less likely from Dink than from anyone else. So I think this Catalan shot is definitely worth trying. In the lines with knight c3, Dink is actually way harder to predict. He has played this c5, c takes d5, c takes d4 boring line, which everybody hates, and it seems to be a draw, and we had like a real headache trying to break it for the match between Magnus and Jan. And there is also 4c6 that Dink likes to play occasionally, and he plays it for a win. He knows it really well, so in general I would say black has a really wide choice here, and it would be a very difficult task for white to prepare all the lines. What white could do is to actually play 3 knight c3, where it's either bishop b4 or d5. d5 followed by cd5, ed5, we'll say bishop g5, c6, has been played by Dink a lot, and I would say there is a real chance he will stick to it in the World Championship match, but again, white gets a game, and yeah, you only need to play better to win this. It's more or less a gift. While after bishop b4, white is you know, really limited with his options, but Jan, for instance, tried f3 against Karakin and won, so in general we could imagine him having some idea for one game that could worth a shot. To summarize this, I would say in the games where Jan plays white, like my bet is 1e4, 1e5, and then the Rui Lopez, no Berlin, but the one with a6, and then some tricky tries from Jan with d3 or rook e1 or most probably both. While in the games where Dink plays white, my bet would be no 1e4, something with the bishop on g2, which means Catalan, or probably 1c4 or knight f3 followed by g3, with some attempts to get a very sharp game. Not too ambitious lines in terms of analytics, but at least he will try to bring all the attention to the middle game. Anyway, we'll see. So see you all guys in Astana, and we'll see how many of my bets will prove to be correct.